Will today be the final game of the 2018 season for the Philadelphia Eagles? Good afternoon and happy holidays to everyone out there. I'm Chris McPherson and welcome to the Kickoff Show presented by Axalta. I'm joined alongside Fran Duffy, and it comes down to this. The Eagles are in Landover, Maryland to take on Washington. The playoff hopes, they're still alive, but of course they need a little bit of help. First things first, they must defeat Washington, but then Chicago must knock off Minnesota. Now, Fran, Chicago still has something to play for, okay? Chicago with a win and a Los Angeles Rams loss would get a first-round bye. So it's not like that Matt Nagy is going to be sitting out his players. Nonetheless, though, before we get into scoreboard watching, Fran, the Eagles must take care of their own business today.
It's going to be very hard for this Eagles team to not have their eyes cast out west and see how Chicago is doing out in Minneapolis. But they've got to take care of business. You've got to beat this Washington Redskins team. This is a team that you've gone down to the wire with numerous times over the course of the last few years. We've seen some heartbreaking losses down there on that field over the course of the last few years. They've got to go and win this game.
Don't remind us. Don't remind us whatsoever. Let's take a quick look, though, at the standings in the conference going into today to kind of set up the picture here. The Saints, they have the home field advantage completely locked up. Again, Los Angeles, Chicago, they have their divisions wrapped up. They will be 2 and 3. Dallas, they've won the NFC East. They are locked in as the 4 seed. You look at the wild card picture, Seattle is in. Now, Minnesota can be the 5th seed with the win and a Seattle loss. But, of course, we want Minnesota out of the picture, and the Eagles to get in there. The best the Eagles can be would be the 6th seed. Let's send it now to FedEx Field and check out the live warm-ups. Again, these two teams met less than a month ago at Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles won 28-13 on Monday Night Football. And great news there. We'll talk about the defense and start things off, Fran. Jordan Hicks is in the starting lineup. His calf injury flared up, and it's going to be big. But one thing to note here is that he's starting as an outside linebacker today with Nigel Bradham manning the middle.
I think that makes sense from a defensive coaching standpoint. Is if his calf is flaring up, rather than him start to wear the signal helmet early in the game, and then if he has to come out, you have to change things up. Let's just keep the consistency. Let Nigel Bradham call the shots here today. He's done it in the past. Obviously, did it for the Super Bowl run last year. Let Nigel worry about things in the middle of that defense and get everybody lined up.
Why don't we take a look at the starting lineup for the Eagles defense really quickly. Some other good news. Tim Jernigan starting today at defensive tackle, providing more of a rotation there. And again, Jordan Hicks is in the lineup. So top to bottom there, you see everyone else in place. So the Eagles defense, my eyes are on them because both teams are starting different quarterbacks today than that first meeting earlier this month. But for Washington, it's its 4th quarterback of the season in Josh Johnson. Can you give us a scouting report on what he brings to the table? Because he was out of football just a few weeks ago.
He was the #1 pick in the AAF draft just a couple months ago.
Correct.
I think when you look at Josh Johnson, he's going to provide a little bit of a different element. He's going to use his legs a little bit more so for sure than what Mark Sanchez and Colt McCoy offered going into that last matchup. So the Eagles will have to watch out for the quarterback run game. But this is still a team that wants to run the football. Get Adrian Peterson downhill. That's the focus of this run game. They got him over 1,000 yards on the season last week against Tennessee. Expect a heavy dose of the future Hall of Famer here today.
Interesting to know about Pearson is he had 98 yards in the first matchup against the Eagles, but had 90 of them on one carry.
Yes.
And still didn't crack the 100-yard plateau. How is Washington utilizing him, knowing that Josh Johnson, the pressure is really going to be on him? It's not going to be a vertically defined offense for him. It's going to be a lot of contained intermediate plays. So how is Washington utilizing Adrian Peterson in this run game?
Downhill run game. They want to keep his shoulders square to the line of scrimmage, get him downhill. He's still very difficult to bring down one-on-one. So they want to keep him downhill. And that is a lot of inside runs, Chris, between the tackles. But they will pull those guards out to the perimeter, get him out in space, and once he gets those shoulders turned, then he's full steam ahead. That's what they want to do with Adrian Peterson.
Now, Chris Thompson, he's hurt the Eagles in the past, was banged up for the first meeting earlier this month. What is he adding to the offense as a complement to Adrian Peterson?
He's one of the best third down backs in the NFL, and I've said that now for a couple of years. He's a great blocker, he's a great special teamer, and he's an outstanding receiver, a mismatch player out in space. And not only that, but they'll also work in the former Eagle Byron Marshall as well, a guy who can play running back and receiver. They'll play both those guys at the same time and try and create some matchups out in space.
Why would you say the Eagles' run defense has been better of late? Last week against Houston, no Lamar Miller, but Alfred Blue and Deontay Foreman had a combined 13 rushing yards. Deshaun Watson was the team's leading rusher.
Sure.
But with Jernigan back, why has this run defense been so better in the last couple weeks? You can go back to the Los Angeles game as well.
Yeah, I think really it comes down to everybody doing their job. You hear that all the time with coaches. And defending the run, it comes down to setting the edge, being strong at the point of attack, and then pursuit from the backside. And whether you're getting those strong edges set from guys like Rasul Douglas and the outside linebackers, Brandon Graham and Chris Long and Michael Bennett up front, or if you're just getting guys coming from the backside, you get great pursuit. Obviously, you got the great run stuffers inside with Fletcher Cox and Tim Jernigan. Haloti Ngata has played very well the last couple of weeks. Everybody just doing their job, doing their part, and that's what it comes down to in defending the run at a high level. They're going to need that here today.
All right, let's take a look at the starting line for the Eagles offense, and more great news as Jason Peters, he had to exit the game last week in the first drive with a quad injury, but Nick Foles is coming off his record-setting performance, 471 yards against Houston. Because again, going back, he didn't play in that first matchup against Washington, so what will Washington try to do to get him off kilter today?
I would expect a lot of A-gap pressure, meaning that's going to be those blitzers right up the gut, right at Nick Foles. They're going to try and make him uncomfortable. They have shown that they will send pressure. They blitzed Carson Wentz 20 times in that last meeting a few weeks ago, so I would expect to see more of that. That's kind of their identity. They want to send pressure up the middle using those linebackers, so that's Mason Foster, Sean Dion Hamilton, Zach Brown. Expect to see all three of those guys utilized in that pressure scheme.
Okay, we saw in the starting lineups that Josh Adams is still the starting running back, but Darren Sproles had a touchdown last week as a receiver, had a touchdown in the first matchup with Washington. What has he brought to this offense, providing kind of a spark here in the last month of the season?
He obviously brings the juice. I mean, he's got the ability to make those plays out in space. They love him on those sweet perimeter runs, but then also on those draw plays where they can suck the defense upfield and then allow Darren Sproles to hit them once they get up into the open space. But I think really what it comes down to with all these Eagles running backs, trust that offensive line. They're going to get some movement up front. Even against this strong defensive front from Washington, you have to trust that group and then take the yards that they block for you and then give you a little bit extra. Really try and create something as well, make that first man miss.
All right, so we're going to get into some of the key matchups later on in the show, but first we're going to welcome in Eagles insider Dave Spadaro and Amy Campbell to give us the key storylines as well as their bold predictions. And Dave, why don't we start with the matchup in the trenches there, the Eagles offense. One matchup I'm going to love to see today is Ryan Kerrigan from Washington going against Lane Johnson, coming off his outstanding performance against J.J. Watt.
Yeah, Chris, let me just start by saying that we are in front of a large number of Eagles fans here at FedEx Field. It is so green down here. It's really overwhelming. We've seen Eagles fans throughout the years, supporting the team on the road. But Amy, this is unbelievable.
This feels like a home.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially looking around, there's a lot more green here than there is maroon.
And so back to the storyline for me, it is all about the Eagles offensive line and the Redskins front seven. Kerrigan, Lane Johnson, great matchup. We know the matchups. We know the Redskins are going to bring pressure. That's my storyline of the day, how the Eagles handle that pressure.
Well, I'm looking at how they contain quarterback Josh Johnson. Of course, the Eagles had success against this team already once this year, but they did not have to face Josh Johnson, who's had a lot of success using his legs the last 3 games that he's played. And, of course, we saw Philadelphia kind of struggle to contain Deshaun Watson on the ground last week. So can they have success stopping the run against a mobile quarterback like Josh Johnson?
And Cam Newton and Marcus Mariota, it's been a struggle. All right, so my bold prediction is one that you're not maybe going to love. I say this game goes down to the wire.
Oh, Dave, I cannot hear
And
this
Jake
again.
Elliott once again kicks a game-winning field goal. I know you don't like it. It's a win, but not exactly the way we thought it would go. So that's my bold prediction.
I hope you're wrong. My heart can't take much more of these down-to-the-wire games. I'm going with another Nick Foles 400-yard passing game. A 471 yards career high for him last week. I'm expecting that he does it again this
All
week.
right, so those are our bold
Very
predictions.
bold.
Let's do a little. You guys ready for a little EAGLES Eagles? On 3, ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Eagles! All right, Chris and Fran, back to you at the NovaCare Complex.
Well done, well done, well done. Now, I don't know if my heart can take another last-second field goal from Jake Elliott, but it should be noted that in pregame warm-ups, John Clark from NBC Sports Philly had the video. Washington players tried to distract Elliott, messed up his pregame routine so he wasn't able to kick. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes back to haunt Washington later on in the game. So as we get to our bold predictions, let's look at the standings, okay? And then we'll get the graphic off the screen really quickly, especially for Fran here, because it's your last chance in the regular season to get on the board. So are you going to be bold, or Or are you going to be meek just to give yourself a false number, some garbage time numbers, so to speak?
Well, I think that you kind of teased that very well by talking about what the Redskins did during pregame. They're going to pull out all the stops. We talked about that this week on Eagles Game Plan. This Washington team is going to pull out all the stops. I expect to see a couple trick plays from them on offense. Well, guess what? I kind of think that the Eagles might turn the tables a little bit as well. I'm going to make my bold prediction the fact that the Eagles will execute a trick play here today. I don't know if it's going to be a Philly special. I don't know if it's going to be a big flea flicker down the field. But if it's going to be some kind of trick play, the Eagles are going to get on the board with one of those trick plays. They're going to execute something here and get things going on offense.
My thing here, Fran, is what defines a trick play here?
I define a trick play.
So anything goes pretty much.
If Nelson Aguilar takes a jet sweep and goes for 3 yards, I'm getting on the board. I'm taking it.
There we go. We will not have Fran shit up by the end of the season. So for my bold prediction, okay, mine is going to pay homage to Malcolm Jenkins, who has not missed a snap on defense all season long. Okay, Josh Johnson is known for throwing them up, had a couple interceptions last week against Tennessee in the loss there. I think that Jenkins will not just get an interception, he's going to return it to the house and end his regular season in Pro Bowl fashion. He wasn't named to the Pro Bowl squad this year, but he was certainly deserving of the honor. One of the leaders on this team, one of the best free agent acquisitions in franchise history. Malcolm Jenkins gets a pick six to define the Eagles' win, and I think they get the help they need. I don't know if that's part of the bold prediction, but I'll throw that in the mix as well, that the Eagles get the help they need from Chicago to make it to the playoffs. All right, what we're going to do now is send it back to FedEx Field and welcome in the Hall of Fame duo of Merrill Reese and Mike Quick, as they're going to give us the players to watch. It should be noted that this is Merrill's least favorite stadium in all of the NFL, including Jerry World, including MetLife Stadium. FedEx Field is the absolute worst. So on that note, take it away, gentlemen.
Chris, the calendar says December 30th, but it is a beautiful mid-November type day here in Landover, Maryland, as the Eagles get set to play the Redskins. Mike, who is your player to watch?
It's going to be number 27, Malcolm Jenkins. If you watch the Redskins play, their offense is going to go through Adrian Peterson. And not only does Malcolm make plays and stopping people, but he also does a variety of things to make this defense work. I'm going to keep my eyes on Malcolm Jenkins.
I think that's a good one. I'll throw you a bit of a curveball. My player to watch, probably on television, is Bears quarterback Mitch Trubisky. He needs a big game so that the Bears can beat the Vikings. I feel good about the Eagles' chances here today, and if Trubisky and his Bears friends do their job, it'll be the playoff-bound Philadelphia Eagles. Let's hope. Back to you, Chris.
That smirk on Merrill's face at the end, the absolute best. He could get away with that. He could get away with saying Mitchell Trubisky is a player to watch, and certainly all Eagles fans will have their eyes on that game. Now, if you are following the action in our Eagles Game Day Live on PhiladelphiaEagles.com, we're going to have the score from every game around the league. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't need to watch any other game. Watch Eagles against Washington, and you can focus on the scores. We'll have every score, including the LA Rams-San Francisco game, because that obviously factored into what happens with Chicago. So it's one-stop shop right here on PhiladelphiaEagles.com and the Eagles app. And, of course, you can listen to the Merrill Mike broadcast as well. So let's get into some of the key matchups for today's showdown, starting with Zach Ertz. We saw him during the warm-ups. He set the all-time NFL single-season receptions record for a tight end last week against Houston. Thought it might have happened this week against Washington, a team he's had a lot of success against in the past. Who is going to defend him after DJ Swearinger was released earlier this week by Washington?
It's a good question. My guess is it's going to be DeShazer Everett, and that's the guy that was in charge of defending the tight ends in man-to-man coverage before the Redskins acquired Swearinger a couple of years ago. So my guess is that Greg Minuski will again lean on the former college corner turned safety to defend Zach Ertz man-to-man. Now, this would be a matchup that if I were the Eagles, I would try and exploit. And I think there would be some openings as well for Dallas Goedert in this game. So expect to see a good amount of the tight ends. And Zach Ertz, we know, always seems to find success against this team.
15 catches against Washington back in 2014. You can never have too much Ertz against Washington. Now, Dave touched on one of the key storylines there with the O-line going against the Washington D-line. I'm looking at battle in the trenches with Jason Kelce going against a former first-round pick, or this year's first-round pick, I should say, rookie Daron Payne, a player you like a lot.
Yeah, I think Daron Payne has the ability to be an elite defensive tackle in this league. His combination of size, athleticism, power, technique, effort, I mean, he brings it all. Very much like the Eagles' Fletcher Cox, I think Daron Payne can be that level of player. So this will be a big matchup here for Jason Kelce. The Eagles' offensive line did an outstanding job in the last meeting between these two teams. Great double teams at the point of attack, especially especially Jason Kelsey, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson. That entire right side of the offensive line was really good. Need a repeat effort here.
All right, we have a lot more coming up for you here on the Kickoff Show presented by Axalta. We're going to go one-on-one with wide receiver Nelson Aguilar. However, if you are following us on Facebook or Twitter, you need to come on over to PhiladelphiaEagles.com or the app to watch the rest of the show. We'll give you a few minutes to get situated.